Hello, welcome back to Apex Central, your podcast for everything play Apex. It's my whole shift, be your host for this evening or afternoon, I guess, depending on where you are. And joining me will be the two M's. We'll call them the M&M brothers for now. Madruski and Meerko joining me, and Madruski's been having fun with this green screen. I'm sure we'll see different backgrounds be popping up throughout the entirety of the broadcast. If you're just listening to the audio, you're missing out on a show. Meerko as well joining us, of course, from the Complexity offices near Texas. And gentlemen, good to have you guys. It's been a pleasure. It's Meerko, the first time that we've gotten a chance to know each other. Madruski, it's been a long time coming, I'd say, for the two of us to cross paths once again. How are you doing, Madruski?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, you're welcome, man. Very stoic and very appreciative, as always. Meerko, good to have you as well. It's been a pleasure, and good to meet you as well. I mean, this is the first time we've had a chance to really coordinate with one another.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm definitely excited to kind of talk about Apex a bit and share our thoughts on the game and the direction it's going.
Yeah, we got a lot of things too, as far as what we have seen. If you missed the first two episodes, we talked a lot about Poland. We talked a lot about what was going to be coming up with the future of competitive Apex. I'm sure we'll probably touch on most of that, as again, we have a lot of things kind of to wrap up on. We've had a handful of changes that have kind of been pushed through, so we'll kind of talk through it as we go and see what we have to say about everything that's happened and what we're hoping to happen in the near future. Again, if you're not familiar, Madruski played with the Team Liquid boys when it came down to Poland, and Meerko, of course, the Complexity, as represented by his hat coming through. But the competitive scene has been one of those that we've just been kind of sitting in a little bit of limbo between Poland. It happened now almost a month and a half, almost 2 months ago, it feels like. And moving forward, of course, we were talking about things like the Apex scrims that have been going on recently. But before we get into that, I want to catch up on all the other content that's been coming out for Apex Legends. Most specifically, the Halloween event. We talked about it previous to it coming out in our second episode. Now that we've had our chance to play through it, I wanted to know first and foremost, are you guys still playing it? Is it still living up to the expectations that you may have had for the event as it was kind of announced a couple weeks back?
I mean, it's like a good warm-up mode, I guess, at this point, because there's no like real solos in the game.
True.
But it's a fun little game mode to play. I don't think I'm like really playing it that much anymore, though.
Fair enough. Mirko, are you still
Uh,
getting a chance to play on it?
I thoroughly enjoyed it at the beginning. I thought it was a great you know, um, fresh air, and it was a lot of fun being able to kind of play the game in a different kind of mode that you wouldn't expect. But as of now, I kind of stopped playing it. The problem is that they kind of tied challenges to it to get like skins and everything. So a lot of people, once they die, they kind of back out, which kind of ruins like the whole kind of longevity of the game.
Sure.
So I stopped playing it for that reason. But initially, I loved it. I thought it was great, and yeah, I hope they do more events like this.
So was it one of those things, where did you kind of find yourself like not feeling the incentive to continue to queue up for it? Because I was kind of the same way, like almost exactly what you just said, Mirko. I would get the challenges that I needed to do as the shadow figure or whatever, and then if I didn't have any more for that, as soon as I got killed, I would just back out and start again as the human portion of it, or if you want to call it that. So like, was it mostly a challenge incentive for you, or was it just like the game mode maybe got a little bit stale? I guess stale's not like the best word, but maybe it got a little worn out for you. I mean, that's kind of a weird panel to have because we've got two competitive focused guys. So, you're probably not spending a ton of your time playing the casual side of the game. But what was kind of that moment where it flux between like, I want to sign on, I want to play this too, not really.
As soon as they nerfed the charge rifle, I couldn't shoot all the zombies out of the air. So I was like, what's the point?
That would
I
be
think
risky.
I think as an LTM, it did its job, right? It's not supposed to be something that you play hours and hours and hours of, right? It's
Sure.
something you get on, you play maybe a couple hours, maybe a little bit more than that. You have a lot of fun, and then you're kind of done with it, right? I mean, LTMs aren't meant for longevity. So,
Yeah, I
and that
agree.
and that kind of
I
thought,
think
you know what I
I
mean?
think it was I think it was like a lot of fun. And the only thing I would say, like where you're saying is like one little point where they could have made it where it's like I would want to play this game mode more often would be if there was some kind of way like to connect with the lobby. Because I know like it was really interesting. Like I remember like during some of the games, like during end game, like when you finish the game, I think whatever team wins, like when you type in chat like GG, like it connects everyone in the server together. So if there was a way to like once you get to the top 10 of like voice comms were enabled for everyone, something like that, something where you could like connect to
Sure.
like the other, some kind of like communication aspect.
It is.
That's like,
When
what
you
do you
get
mean?
top 10, you can talk to your teammates.
Wait, there's voice comms?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You
well, I
get top 10,
guess,
you can talk to your teammates.
are you serious?
Yeah,
Because nobody
yeah.
ever talks to me in this game. I
I
don't know
I
why.
didn't I didn't hear anything either, and then I like started hearing people talking. I was like, dude, this ain't coming from Discord. Where is this coming from? Yeah, it was like it was top 10. People
Okay,
were like
well,
commenting up. Yeah.
I guess
I
I
guess
I
it's,
had no idea either. I
yeah.
mean, I usually have my in-game chat on mute most of the time anyways,
Yeah, me
but
too.
I
No, I
I
have mine on because I'm trying to communicate with people. It's an online game.
all right.
Talk to
Well,
me, please. I'm
we just
lonely.
we just found out that Ruski's about to play the LTM for the next couple of hours once he gets done. That's about to happen, so he can
Yeah,
talk to teammates. Uh,
find some friends.
yeah, right. So I mean, I guess the final thoughts on it, like, did the event as a whole, I mean, kind of live up to the expectations that you initially built? Like, I found that the skins, they felt rewarding to still do the challenges for. I thought the skins were incredible. I personally didn't buy any of the extra skins, but um, the grind for the ones that were given to like just the event rewards felt rewarding enough. And my biggest thing is I think it could have done with like maybe being released a week later or a couple of days later, so that way it didn't feel like it was sitting up there for so long. But I also think back to like Armed and Dangerous, where it's just shotguns and snipers, and I wish that was like a week longer. Like, I wish I would have had that for a week longer, personally. So, like, did you guys feel like the expectations lived up to its longevity, or do you guys wish that there was a little bit more built into it besides just what you had from the event challenges?
I liked it, and I think it was like a good way to. There was like a little break between Kings Canyon, so that there was a way, like it was a nice way to reintroduce Kings Canyon for the people that wanted to play the map, and then it was good for like a limited time mode where like this type of like Halloween event, these skin aspects, like all this stuff together. I think overall as a whole it was like pretty good. Just there was like maybe like little minor things that they could have did so that people would keep playing it.
Hmm.
I
How about
think
the
my
same page?
biggest takeaway from that event, and I know a lot of people will actually not be with me on this one because of how crazy muzzle flash is, but I wish I could have just played that map in a regular game. Like those, if they kind of do those events and do the map as well as they did for that, I mean, I think the game honestly could blow up because of the fact that every season, every holiday, anything like that, if they have like a theme to the map where they kind of just change it drastically like that, it was so much fun playing on the map. I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
And that was one of the expectations that we were talking with the previous panel in episode 2, that they were saying that a dark Kings Canyon actually sounds like a blast just
Hmm.
based on how it came through. And I thought they did it really well, kind of comparing it to other events, whether they're Halloween themed or like map aesthetic changes. Like, I'm going back to like Blackout when they kept routinely changing the map up, and it never felt the same. Like, it just never felt like each map iteration, it felt different because of how the lighting was working or whatever. But I really did enjoy Dark Kings Canyon. Like, I think that that would be a really fun extra playlist to put in. But beyond that, one of the biggest takeaways that I had was this is one of the first Halloween events that I've played in a game where like there was like a little bit of a jump scare kind of moment. Like, every time like a little spider or a zombie came out, I flinched a little bit. And that's like, I can't say the same thing for games like Overwatch that do Halloween every single year. Like, they're more cartoony. I thought this really kind of hit the tune of, being the aesthetic of Halloween with the whole shadow versus humans thing after you die, but also kind of incorporating the map in more than just like adding like, all right, here's some pumpkins and here are some spider webs. Like, actually adding an element to the game, like in the loot system, that actually made you kind of scared a little bit, was actually super enjoyable.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely
it
like
got
a
me.
very like well made and polished mode, and then I think it like also shows that there's like a lot that they could do with the game. Like no
Yeah.
one thought that they could add like these zombies like that are super fast or running around like two hitting everyone. Like everyone could just like have two separate teams. Like so there's a lot of potential in the game, which I think everyone realizes.
That was super enjoyable. So going on beyond that, though, another kind of mid patch that came out was Charge Rifle. A lot of, I mean, you were talking about Aruski a little bit when it came down to you wanted to use the Charge Rifle to just blow shadows up when they were dropping out of the sky. But in the
It was a lot
actual
of fun.
realism of the game, we had a lot of different kind of thoughts about what the Charge Rifle needed to be. The initial change was essentially just an ammo dispersion change. It didn't really actually tune the damage or the capability of the weapon that previously it had. But now we finally got to the point where you can no longer hold extended energy mags for the weapon as a whole. And there's obviously a little bit of a damage change to it as well. Is the Charge Rifle finally where it needs to be, in your opinion?
I think this is one way of doing it. I have seen in scrims a lot of people are not running it. They've kind of started to steer away from it. I think most teams, if they do find one in a tournament setting, will pick one up simply because of the consistent damage and the ability to kind of destroy a team's economy with shields and everything. The ammo consumption is kind of crazy. I doubt you'll ever see a team pick up two of them unless they have a ridiculous amount of ammo. What I would have liked to seen with the charge rifle is instead of nerfing it and gutting it the way they kind of went about it, they should have just put it in a crate. I think it would have been a perfect power weapon to kind of rival the Kraber or something like that,
Sure.
and just left it how it is. I don't think anyone would have complained about how unnecessarily broken the gun was if it was in a crate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there was like two options, either to get rid of it or put it in a crate. What they did right now, I mean, I think like a hit scan weapon in any like variety or variant is going to be strong in some capable hands, especially with like a lot of competitive players. The thing is, you aren't, like Meerko said, you're not going to see it like on 2 or 3 teammates
Yeah,
anymore.
true. And I mean, it's the simple factor that, it seems like the general consensus is, one, you added a hit scan weapon that's a sniper rifle in a game that there are no other hit scan weapons. I think that kind of, as a whole, kind of puts it into a realm that it's hard to really find its niche when you're doing so many exclusive things that other weapons really don't have the ability to do. So, okay, so we're not seeing it as often. I will say that I was playing a little bit last night, and I picked it up for the first time, and like actively, like when someone would ping, like, hey, charge rifle here, I really wanted to give it an extra go. Do you feel like with the charge rifle not being as prevalent now, or not as common, that the map itself plays a little bit differently, just simply due to the fact that you're not able to beam people from 600 meters away?
Yeah, 100%. The changes do kind of allow a lot more leeway when it comes to close range fights. You're able to kind of actually get up and kind of get personal in the fights, rather than where it was. You couldn't. There was no open ground. Nothing was safe. You
Yeah.
couldn't rotate anywhere. If you were rotating anywhere, your team was already understanding that you were either gonna have to use a wraith portal, or you were gonna be losing a lot of cells trying to traverse like open ground. And it's really changed, being able to kind of actually move around the map. You don't feel like you're storming the beaches of Normandy. You know what I mean? You actually feel like you have a chance when moving across the map.
Risky, what are your
I
thoughts
don't,
on it? How the map plays now?
I don't know, man. I think it's fine. It just depends on like how good you are on rotations. Like I never had a problem with charge rifles. I feel like they should just put it back in.
Ah, kid, dude.
Yeah, okay. Okay, easy trolls coming out
Okay.
from Risky.
Just overall, like, yeah, it's like Mirko said, like pretty much you have to burn a portal. Like you have to be like very hesitant, like you have to be very aware of like pretty much every scenario. And if you're not line of sighting like almost every open area, you're gonna get screwed over. So like this allows like a little bit more maneuverability, allows a little bit more like you don't have to be on your guard all the time. Like it allows you to do more stuff, pretty much rotate into like certain positions.
Fair enough. Now, when we were
And
last, go ahead. Sorry, please continue.
yeah, if you take a fight, you're not gonna be like third party from like 400 meters away with a hit scan weapon that lasers across the map.
Right. So when we were last talking about the differences in the maps, pros and cons versus each of them, um, as you've now had a chance maybe to play more, I won't say like a realistic version of World's Edge, but let's just go ahead and put it in that light, with the charge rifle being a little bit more manageable to deal with. Comparing the pros and cons of each of the maps, which are you kind of feeling? Are you feeling more favorable towards? Do you kind of wish it was back towards how it was when Poland was going on with Kings Canyon, or do you feel like with the way scrims are going now, do you think that the World's Edge map is a better overall competitive map?
Personally, like I like World's Edge a lot. I think it just needs like some kind of editing to the map done to open it up to where it's can be like the main competitive map. That's the thing. Like it's interesting because they have only one map going on at a time. So are they gonna do it so that like once competitive gets started and they announce this stuff, is it gonna be like World's Edge is going to be the main competitive event for let's say 2 to 3 months, and then they're going to switch off to another map, and that's going to be competitive? That's going to change the whole dynamic of the game. Not only that, but it's going to change like the teams. Like there's going to be a team that's going to be strong in World's Edge, or a team that was really strong Kings Canyon might not adapt as well to that map. So one of the things that I would want to see, and I think it's a good like competitive map because it's just a bigger map. It allows like a lot more variety in type of engagements. There's a lot more like different elevations. So on top of that, like on that aspect, I think it's a much better competitive map. What they need to do though is they need to add more loot, which I don't know if there's been a back end like fix to that, but there's you like I don't know if it's like all RNG or if there's been a back end fix where they're trying to like look at it into internally. But when I first started playing the map, and I feel like it's still an issue sometimes, it just feels like the map is huge and there's not enough loot for the map.
You
And then
think
on top
so?
of that, yeah. I mean, like I said, there's like an RNG aspect. So like you could have a game when you're landing and you're looting like a quarter of the map, or not a quarter, but like a POI with potentially like 2, 3, 4, 5 like different like side areas, and you'll leave with white armors and like some other stuff. And then there could be a team that just gets like all purples. So there's an RNG aspect, but I feel like there's times when you're under looted either with attachments, with like heals, or just shields. But like I said, what I would want to see is there's like, if you look at the map, like the world's edge map, pretty much like horizontally, like straight down the middle in the equator, 80% of it is cut off by like huge mountains that are like choke points. So it's like down mid into capital towards geyser, and like pretty much like 80% except the far left of the map is all choke points cut off. So if they somehow like open it up, I think that would make it a much better map. Because right now, if you have to rotate north from south, you have like 3 or 4 different choke points you have to go through, and it's almost guaranteed if a team is there, you're not going to be able to get out or go around the circle. So if they
Meerko,
open that up, I think it'd be like a much better map.
what are your thoughts on the whole POIs versus loot dispersion versus rotations on World's Edge compared to Kings
There
Canyon?
there are definite POIs that you have to contest. If you want to place well in the next tournament, you are gonna have to take a select few of these spots, and you're gonna have to fight for them because they do have better loot than others. It's just how it is. But I do like that. I think if you're a team that wants that high risk, high reward, wants to drop down on a spot that's going to give you guaranteed good loot, you're going to have to fight for it. And at the end of the day, you're going to see the best teams decide to take those fights to get the loot that they need to take over the map and do what needs to be done. Overall, for the actual map, I love it. I think open ground has a lot of hard cover that not a lot of BRs have really been able to do. It's kind of insane. You'll have zones that are almost completely in the open, and it doesn't feel like that because there's
Hmm.
so many rocks, there's so many grooves, there's so many like different kind of elevation to the map. Um, it's really good. I love the fact that they're kind of changing the maps. It makes teams adapt, and whoever can adapt the fastest and the best, they're going to take those first tournaments, and then later on, you're going to see people that kind of redefine the meta and take those second and third tournaments. So if they keep on this pace, I really like it. I think it's a good choice in only having one singular map.
See, that's an interesting conversation point, I think, when it comes down to the loot, because when it was Kings Canyon and you were dropping into either, your competitive scrims or your ranked, it really did feel like at a certain point of time, at least from my experience, I was sitting just in like high plat, low diamond when I was doing ranked. But
Mhm.
when you were dropping down in and it's like, all right, we are going to land Hillside Outpost. And then you start to see 2 to 3 groups heading towards there. It's like, all right, never mind, we're going to bail off. But then we're sitting here with just looting loot crates along the river until we finally get to an area that might not be looted. I feel like with World's Edge, as far as loot dispersion goes, and again, I'm not able to speak from the perspective of whatever pro scrims you guys have going on, but it feels like if you're gonna veer off from your main POI, you could still loot the fringe of major areas and still get loot that is at least passable to make you feel like, all right, we have enough power in our inventory to actually take an early game fight, rather than like what it was in Kings Canyon, where if you didn't feel like you were geared, you were sitting until hopefully you ran across a loot box or a third party to where you could maybe find yourself that little bit of a boost that you want gear wise. I was interested to hear your perspective on that, Ruski, because I feel like with the positioning of the map makes it a lot more punishing if you have to go from one opposite side to the other than say Kings Canyon did. But I feel like there are more available spots to drop down and at least get passable loot. Compared to like when you were landing like that similar fashion in Kings Canyon, there were times where maybe you weren't getting any armor or any attachments at all. So that was an interesting perspective from you, because like I feel like Capital City could fit 3 teams in it and you could all find decent gear coming through.
I mean, yeah, you could drop Capital City, but then there's like a potential for all 3 of your teammates to just leave with white armor and then like 3 or 4 cells. That's what I'm saying. Like like the discrepancy between the loot, like in certain areas, I guess like Meerko said, like you're fighting for better loot, and then yeah, like if you're controlling one POI, that there's going to be like good, like decent chance for good loot, and then like the loot bots like flying around with a potential vault key, like
Sure.
it's pretty major. But in Kings Canyon, if you loot one area, you're pretty much like, okay, we're looting this one area, we're gonna get all the loot in this area. We're probably gonna get either good loot, or we might get bad loot, or we might get a mix. Here, it's like you could loot a whole area, you could loot a huge expansive area, and you might leave with bad loot. And it's like more common than not for me
Hmm.
personally.
Interesting. Because I feel like what, at least as like a spectator, perspective, I would like to see more POIs being contested early than like what we saw at Poland, for instance. Like it was only until we got like late into the finals and like winners finals and losers finals that we started to see people like, all right, we're gonna take a chance, we're gonna drop on somebody, we're gonna fight for this POI. I feel like with this map, the ability to drop into a quote unquote contested area and at least be able to try to pick a fight is maybe a little bit safer than that. Like, you don't have to necessarily 50-50 a drop because of how big some of the major POIs are. I think maybe that's kind of what I was getting at initially, was that the big POIs that are labeled on the map are that much wider, so that way you can actually try to loot there and maybe scrap out a fight somewhere, rather than, all right, like, we're gonna go artillery, but there's another team that's gonna go artillery. We have to fight them on drop, and we don't have a choice. Like, there's no way. Like, you either go through a tunnel and then you're in the back door of somebody else, or you have to go through the second team that's contesting you. I feel like the 50-50 aspect on a map like World's Edge is not nearly as punishing as it was on Kings Canyon.
The only thing about that, though, is a couple of those drops, that 50-50 turns into a 25 real quick.
Okay, true, yeah, because there's 4 teams that are there, right?
Because Skyhook and Capital are easily going to have 4 or 5 teams landing there. I would imagine in a tournament setting, it's going to be more like probably 4 at the most. 3 is going to be standard. But then you're going to have places like Factory. That's definitely going to have 2 teams. There's going to be a lot of spots that are going to have multiple teams dropping on each other every single game. Because, like Ruski said, some of those spots don't have enough loot, and so it's going to be those big spots that are going to be people are going to be fighting for, and like the first couple of games. And if you lose those fights, you're going to have to probably take a secondary looting spot that's not as good, because like Ruski said, there isn't enough. Not like, I'm not going to say there's not enough loot on the map, because there are a lot of pills. There's a lot of like extra buildings that you can rotate into. Like you said, there is a lot of scrap loot that you can get. I will agree with that, but primary loot, the loot that you get off of your drop, there's like 4 or 5 spots that are top tier, the best you can get, and there's a lot of spots that you're barely making ends meet, like coming out.
Fair enough. So the general consensus between the two of you, it sounds like you would rather have it in Kings Canyon style, where everybody gets a maybe a smaller, but they still get a POI where they can loot, and then you're looking for mid game and late game fights rather than the RNG of early game fights. Is that kind of what I'm getting from the both of you?
I mean that, but then also if you're talking about like specifically for World's Edge versus like Kings Canyon for like that aspect of landing, why not have the better of both worlds? Like, why not have World's Edge, but then on top of that just have increased loot or like higher quality loot spawns? Like, they have the potential for that. Like,
I like this map, to be honest. I like it more than Kings Canyon. I think for competitive, it's actually a lot more balanced. Yeah, it does feel like the POIs are kind of squished in compared to how big the map is. But I do like the fact that if you want to take a fight early, you can. If you want to take a lesser looted area, then you can do that, and you'll have a safer mid game transitioning into a late game. There's different play styles to be played on this map. If you're a frag heavy team and you want to prioritize kills, you're going to go for a highly contested drop. And that's, there's different avenues of scoring in a competition now, because you have different play styles that are actually being presented. So
fair enough.
It's pretty
good. Kind of around the same tune, but maybe changing, the key a little bit here. When it comes to weapon tiers, with the charge rifle getting kind of brought back down, we kind of got sidetracked with map talks, which is fine. But what are you guys feeling is the tier list when it comes down to weapons? What are like the must-haves? Because last it seemed, R99 Peacekeeper still near the top of the conversation pool. Of course, charge rifle was there if you found it, but has things shifted a lot in your mind, or is it still pretty much you're looking at things like longbow, even without the skull piercer, still being a huge impact on the map? What would you say is at the top of your tier list weapon-wise right now?
I mean, I think an R99 is still like one of the best weapons in the game. It's like hard to pass it up. Just like obviously with this map being a bigger map, there's more need for range. So I think longbows aren't picked up as much, but I think they will be starting to get picked up like once like competitive starts like actually happening, not just scrims, but more of like in a tournament setting. I think more teams are going to be running longbows. Wingman is still like an overall like very strong weapon, just hands down in like capable hands is like one of the best weapons. Peacekeeper like as a secondary in a close range encounter, it's going to be a strong weapon. So I think like if you wanted to like a tier list, I would say R9 Wingman is like top tier PK, like situationally, as a secondary. Longbow, then it's like R301 flatline, and then potentially triple take with like the charge rifle getting nerfed. Like if you get a kitted out triple take, you could probably like there's good damage to be had there. And that's like with the choke on it, like it's pretty much the hit scan, just like a balanced like charge rifle.
So devotion's disgusting, obviously. The ability to basically clear out a full team in one clip is there in that gun.
Is that with or without a controller?
It's with or without. It's disgusting. It just hands down, it's disgusting. The amount of times I've seen someone walk into a building and just kill an entire team with one clip, it's in scrims, it's starting to get kind of nuts. The devotion's a disgusting gun. The scout is by far the best gun in the game. There is no kind of contest for me with that.
With or without double
Um,
tap though,
it
or
doesn't
does it
matter.
matter?
The
Okay.
gun is disgusting. It was already pretty much top tier in Kings Canyon, and they gave it a damage buff, and they gave it a mod that lets you basically get 2 precise bullets, one after the other, right on the target. It's disgusting. You can basically 4 bullets will kill someone almost every single time now. It's pretty insane. Um, the wingman with skull piercer being taken out, and they raised the headshot ratio,
Yeah.
or I don't know how they you explain that, but you get more damage for headshots now. That gun is by far probably the best you can get for competitive. It has everything you could possibly want out of it: short range, short range, long range, medium range. It's gonna do it all, especially in capable hands. Long range, it's not gonna skip a beat. The R99 is incredibly strong, and I think you're going to see a couple EVA 8s in competition just because of the double tap. It does have that ability to be kind of mixed in the team, and it can actually do a lot of damage. So that's something I'm really interested in seeing. But yeah, that's about it. I'd definitely put the Scout top.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's one weapon that I missed out. But like I don't know if it was the strongest or still really good on like Kings Canyon, but I think the reason why it's like such a better weapon here is because there's a lot more open area and there's just like longer range. So like it really stands out. I think it was actually a good weapon, but it just situationally
It
it's
wouldn't beat out
under.
the
Yeah,
longbow, but
yeah, yeah.
in
right.
Kings Canyon, it was right there because like when it came to like shooting rotations, the consistency of the scout with peppering someone. If you had a teammate with a longbow or anything else like hitting them, they pretty much died if they were running through the open. There was like no getting away from a scout with comboed anything else. So that gun is going to be disgusting to see in competition. A lot of people are going to be picking that up.
Well, the thing that I have enjoyed most about the Scout, I always found a lot of favor in the Scout, even when Kings Canyon was around, like when you're dealing with, if you only found a 3-time scope, the Scout actually kind of felt like it hit true at that range because it's just a little bit beyond mid-range. You're not going to get the same kind of range or damage that you would have got of a longbow, but you could still, like you mentioned, like pepper and spray at people. But now with the double tap, there are times where I'm in a close range fight and I have to reload like a Havoc or a Devotion like I have. I'll just switch to a double tap scout and hip fire that thing, and it still absolutely destroys people. I think it's like the mechanic of the gun is actually super fun as well. Would you say that it's not balanced at all though? Would you say like now this is a weapon that might be just a little bit too above where it needs to be? Meerko is shaking his head emphatically yes.
Yep. Yep. It was already insane. I think just adding the double tap would have been kind of interesting to see. But you can't the problem is that I have with the balancing in this game is they don't do layered balancing. It's either all or nothing. I
Sure.
mean, look at the longbow. They buffed it in 3 different ways in one patch. And there was like, oh man, it's too broken. All right, we'll just take all 3 away. And what I'd love to see from them is rather than buffing guns multiple times, whether it be through a mod or whether it being a direct buff to the actual gun stats, just do it one at a time.
Sure.
If they would have just buffed the scout by the damage, and then we saw how it did there, I think it would have been a lot healthier. But yeah, now it's kind of disgusting. There's so many times where I'm fighting a player in scrims or something, and I'm dead. Like I don't know what happened. I peeked them and I'm like, guys, I died. I got 2 taps. I don't know what happened. I just randomly took 140 damage from 2 bullets.
Ruski, same
'Cause
page or
Yeah, the
oh,
accuracy on the gun and capable hands is like it melts like Mirko said, like pretty much like 2 headshots. And I feel like I don't know, just from personal use of the gun, it's like I aim and then I just like it does the damage. It does like the work for you. Like
yeah,
you're just like outplaying a person just by like, just click like pretty much what I would want to see with the scout though, like if I had like a balance variant to pretty much make it where it's something where like it has a lot of potential, but at the same time, so like in a really capable hands, it would be really strong, but then it would also like be nerfed in a certain way. Would be I want like a cool variant of it would be if they could take off like this. Right now, it has like a limit to the semi-automatic fire. Like there's an internal like limit to like how fast it could fire, right? So if they potentially got rid of that, but then also nerfed the damage and like gave it higher recoil, so that way it would be a weapon that would reward you for like accuracy and for hitting shots, but at the same time you have a lot more potential for it as well.
Fair
Because
enough.
right now, like, and it's like in its position, it's kind of hard not to not to do damage with it.
Yeah, you could really feel it too. Like once you get a blue stock, blue stabilizer, or higher, that thing shoots as true as ever. And yeah, okay, I could totally see that. So my follow-up question to this, when it comes on the weapon tier list, there were obviously your outstanding performers, but we didn't talk about the bottom end of the spectrum. You've got things like your alternator now without disruptor rounds is pretty much not even close to being a favorable weapon, and things like the hemlock, the prowler, which early game they might have some use, but once you get to the late game, if you're using one of those, it feels like you're really not able to maximize on what you could potentially be doing. Do you feel like in this current meta that there is more of a separation between the good and the bad than what we previously had at King's Canyon when things like disruptor rounds were there for the alternator and the RE45 and things of that nature? Or do you feel like this is a better dispersal of, good to bad when it comes to your tier list personally?
I think there's somewhat of a better dispersal, but the thing is, like, with the previous meta, I think like disruptor rounds pretty much like
Ruled the
over
world, yeah.
yeah, ruled everything. So put everything in a perspective where if you're not using these rounds, or if you're not using this type of weapon, then you're gonna lose a fight. And like we had a hard definition of what is the best gun in the game. Here, there's a lot like more variants. Like here, like you said, like Meerko was saying, like the devotion is very strong. Like personally, I think before they added the disruptor rounds, I think like people were starting to realize how strong the devotion was and like how strong like energy weapons were. But then like disruptor rounds came out and it pretty much like vaulted everything else.
Right.
So I would say like that is a viable weapon. You have the scout rifle, you have the R301, you have the flatline with an anvil, or like flatline is a pretty like solid weapon just to have. Like so there's before it's like if I don't have like in the previous meta, it felt like if I didn't have disruptor rounds or if I didn't have this gun, like I lose a fight. Like you still sometimes feel like oh I lost this like I lost the fight because for example like he had this gun and I had this gun in this 1v1 situation, but you can still do like a damage output and it's still like more or less even. Versus like before it was like if I didn't have this weapon, like I'm going to lose the fight. So I think it's definitely in a better spot.
Mirko, you concur?
Yeah, for the most part, I think the only guns in this patch that you just don't want to pick up, discluding mods, would be RE45, the P2020, and the Mozam. Everything else has a place in the meta. I've been running 301 a lot now when I pick it up or see it. I mean, I think a lot of these guns actually are starting to kind of cater to the individual, which is kind of nice. The flatline has a lot of versatility to it. If you pick it up and you get the anvil, it's basically a wingman. I mean, it's doing 45 damage to the chest.
You can
Yeah,
turn it into full auto if you want.
yeah, exactly. And then if you need to go into a building, you can put it full auto. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's, in my opinion, except for the scout and a couple of other things, I still think the R9 needs to be nerfed. I don't think the ammo is the problem. I think it's the actual gun itself. Um, but there's
Yeah, the
just a
damage
couple.
output is
Yeah,
just way too quick.
there's a
Like fire
couple
rate's insane.
there's a couple guns that need to be tweaked, but overall, it's looking good. I think the guns are starting to become pretty balanced. I hope that when dealing with more balances, they don't go with randomized spray patterns. I don't like
Sure,
that at all.
sure.
I think everyone hates that. I don't think anyone really is like, oh man, let's let's keep out the consistency of the gun or the ability to learn a gun. And let's just put an RNG spray to nerf. It just doesn't feel good.
Fair enough. I was going to say
Yeah,
this.
when
Go ahead, Risky.
you brought up the prowler, that's pretty much what I was gonna say. Like I felt like it had an unneeded nerf. Like that is the least enticing thing that you want to see in an FPS game. It's like when you're spraying a weapon, it's like, hey, I'm spraying a weapon. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna go over here, or like I'm gonna just start shifting. It's like pretty much you're losing because the game is telling you, hey, we're gonna give you like an RNG aspect on how the gun is gonna like perform, and you don't want that in an FPS game. Like you want the
Right.
gun to perform with your ability, and like you want to have like a somewhat set like standard with the gun that
Mhm.
like something that you can learn over time, like Mirko said.
Fair enough. So, interesting conversation point that you guys just briefly mentioned. P2020 hammer points. At one point in time, people were just essentially saying, with disruptors were around, you melt away shields, the P2020 hammer point is absolutely viable because of how much flesh damage that it does do. Do you still feel like that's the case at all, or is it not worth taking because of how much healthier other weapons are currently in this current meta?
I think one teammate having it's really good because you call armor breaks and then they can work off that. The only combo I can honestly see someone running a P2020 with, though, where it's going to be able to do what it needs to do, you're gonna have to be running like an R9. There's just not enough consistent damage like the disruptor to break armors quickly and switch to the P2020.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Risky,
the
agree?
other thing. Yeah, I think. I mean, I think the gun is still like one of the strongest guns in the game. I think it's just very situational. Also, with King's Canyon, there would be a lot more potential for it because like most of the fights are going to be close to range, and then here it's like you only have two. Like every person only has two weapon like slots, so you're giving up one potential by switching out one of your secondary weapons for P20. And
Got
like
you.
on top of that, you have to find the hammer point, and then you have to find like the right needed stuff for it. But and it's like capable hands, and I mean even in not capable hands, the gun, if you have armor breaks, it's a three shot. It's a three shots like instantly like melt somebody. And with TTK being like so high in this game, the potential to pretty much like take somebody out of the fight that quickly with or without armor is going to be huge. That's why disruptors were so around. That's why disruptor rounds were so strong, and then that's like why like a hammer point or any type of weapon like that that can somehow get a person from a 100 to 0 quickly is going to be always somewhat viable.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so kind of wrapping everything into, a relevant picture here. The T1 hub has been doing more Pro League scrims. I know you guys have been doing a lot more scrims as well, kind of over the last couple of weeks especially. So the first question kind of being, how are all those things going? But more importantly, I'm more interested in has there been more of a legend meta that's been kind of developing? Last we talked, Crypto had just essentially came out. We were kind of talking about his pros and cons. How could he potentially fit? But now that we've kind of gotten more of the organized leagues coming back and scrims happening almost every single day for multiple hours, have you guys started to see, without giving away too many of your own strategies, have you guys started to see a kind of meta kind of evolve when it comes down to which legends are being preferred now that Crypto's been kind of figured out for everybody?
I think the standard meta that like has been around since before Poland, the classic Wraith, Watson, Pathfinder, I think
Yeah.
it's always going to have a place in the game. Like it's too hard to pass up. I know me and Mirko have talked about this like off of the podcast like before, where the potential with to reset after a fight with Watson, like her rechargeability is just so strong. And I think like a good counter to that, like Mirko brought up before with me was like a limit to how much the shield can recharge. Because pretty much like I said on the map, like let's say you are in a disadvantageous position, like let's say you have like a battery and 4 cells only in a regular like game, like with those type of meds in any type of VR, you're going to be punished in a rotation. You're going to have to like try to reset. So it's going to like dwindle your opportunities later and later. Like the longer the game goes on, that's like your opportunities are being dwindled. With the Watson, you don't have to rely on those meds. You pretty much just pop her alt. You sit there. You have
Right.
like potential. Yeah, you have a potential to like peek out. You could do damage and you could reset without having to heal. It slows down any type of push. Like there has to be some. I think I think she's still some like one of the strongest legends in the game, and I think she's almost always going to be violent competitive unless there's some kind of like a slowdown to her abilities, and her ultimate has to have probably a cap on how much she could recharge on shield, and potentially maybe not even block nades or like have a limit to how many nades. It's way too powerful. So, but besides that, like besides Watson being like just a figure, and you need like a Wraith and a Pathfinder for rotations, it's very strong. I think like and Amir is probably going to agree with me. Like, I think we've seen a lot of jibs coming out, and I guess he'll talk about that.
Dude, it is the wild west when it comes to comps. Like, it is nuts. There's Gibraltar's, there are lifelines coming back. I'm seeing Bangalores. I've even seen Mirage once or twice come out, and there's a lot of people that are willing to kind of test the waters and see what's going on, and I've seen a lot of it work. And there's a lot of reasons for them picking it, and I agree with a lot of them. So what's actually kind of great with this map, because of how open it is and how different it is from Kings Canyon, Kings Canyon relied on Pathfinder. You needed one because of the fact of height advantage was so strong.
Right.
His rotation was insane, and also the fact that the map catered to Pathfinder. There were so many spots where he could get an angle that he could choke out a team, or he could just help his team basically win the fight by himself. It was just he was strong. This map is not like that. They have taken out so many height variables to his kit. There's not a lot of things you can grapple off anymore, and a lot of people are starting to switch off him because of that. The problem with Pathfinder in this map is he's too big. And so without the ability to have those kind of height advantages to swing up onto and kind of cut off rotations for other teams, or a little play like kind of safe with him, you're going to see a lot of people switching off. You're going to see Wraith, Watson, and Gibraltars. You're going to see Lifeline and Gibraltars being played. Gibraltar's just sick. If you haven't seen his kit, it is kind of disgusting. They have been buffing him and buffing him and buffing him, and yeah, now it's starting to get kind of ridiculous. His shield lasts, his bubble shield lasts 20 seconds,
That's
and
wild.
it's on a 30-second cooldown. His arm shield can block up to a Kraber shot. It'll completely negate a Kraber shot. And his ult is, I think it's on like a 2.5-minute cooldown, so it's very fast.
It's very
Yeah.
very fast.
Yeah, so there's a lot of plays you can make with that. He's starting to get pretty crazy. Also, with the passive of his bubble, it's a lifeline buff to your team. Like, come on, man,
it's wild.
It's insane. You're gonna see a lot of comps, which I love. It allows everyone to kind of spark their creativity, and you're gonna see a lot of people playing comps that kind of suit their play style. So this map's gonna be pretty sick. There's a lot to be played.
You did bring up crypto, but I was gonna say,
Oh, not him.
obviously, yeah. I mean, obviously, he's the only one. Like, I think he's probably less played than Mirage at this point, like you said in the scrim.
The problem with crypto is he is basically the same size as Pathfinder with no movement. He is humongous. He's a big target with no mobility, and honestly, his kit isn't that great, especially for the fact that you can pop his ult and the counter is just to drop your armor.
shield,
so you don't,
right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't do anything if we were being honest. The greatest thing about crypto is that you can basically use his drone to find teams nearby without having to risk your teammates. But other than that, he honestly has no value.
I mean, now that a lot of people have figured out that you can just drop armor to counters all completely, I think they're gonna. I mean, hopefully they need to rework him because otherwise he has almost no impact in the game. When he was first introduced, I thought that he would have like a pretty high skill ceiling because when I first played him, when you bring out the drone, like you could scout out and also like obviously looking at banners tells you how many teams are nearby, but you could scout out and there's a way to like recall his drone instantly. So there would be a high skill gap with getting his drone in like in certain positions, getting info that way, and pretty much like having it out and then like bring you back like forth, bring you in and out. But like his ultimate and like Meerko said, his kit is just way too like underpowered. And if you could just counter his ultimate by right clicking, so like, what's the point?
It's funny because I don't know if you guys tuned in the last that we had the show, but Hotsick had been playing exclusively crypto, and he was sure as could be that he was going to find a way to make crypto work. I need to catch up with him to see if he's still trying to make crypto a thing, because he was adamantly playing crypto. Like, I remember watching his stream, like when things would go wrong, he's like, don't worry guys, I got it next time around, learning curve thing. I'd be interested to see if he's got any kind of workarounds, because I'm glad that you brought up Gibraltar, because are you guys starting to see when Gibraltar's in the mix, like Gibraltar and Watson together, or do you think that Gibraltar with a Pathfinder Wraith is still viable, or do you just have to have Watson? Because it feels like in King's Canyon you had to have Watson, and at least initially with World's Edge, people were saying, we don't need to have her, she's still good, but has that conversation changed to now she's a must-have?
She's not a must-have, but she's definitely going to be seen in probably like 80% of the comps because of the fact of her strength. I think everyone agrees that her abilities, her defensive capabilities are just too good to pass up on. But with the way Poland was, kills were weighted way too high. Placement was not weighted enough, and so you're going to see teams picking up aggressive comps. And if you want mobility and you want aggression, that's not Watson. So a couple teams, especially in the early rounds, I think when people aren't going to be kind of respecting their opponents and they're just trying to get as many kills as possible to secure themselves into the next round, you might see people dropping Watson. And then in the later rounds, once you need that, because every team is insane and any misstep is going to result in you losing a lot of armor, you're going to need Watson to kind of be your reset button, as Risky was saying. So I think that'll be something to see as well. I think people will be running 2 comps in tournaments, one for early stages and one for late.
Fair enough. Risky, agreed?
That's a good thought process. I think definitely people are like, pretty much there was a set meta on like what you have to run, and there was a little variance in it, like with King's Canyon and at Poland. But we're gonna see a lot more different comps being like run right now, and a lot of people are testing out like a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, like we had a lot of success with Lifeline. We were running Lifeline without Watson, and we were winning scrims and doing well with that. So just as like for us testing wise, there's a lot of possibilities without Watson in the mix, and bringing in different characters. We were running Gibraltar as well without Watson. So.
Cool. That's good to see. I'm glad that we're seeing some versatility in there, because Kings Canyon near the end of it, the end of it, when we last saw it, it really felt like there was only one real play style if you wanted to be successful. It's good to see that it's getting a little bit more diverse.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something there, Ruski? It looked like you're
Yeah,
about to.
with like the size of the map, pretty much, and like Meerko said, you there's gonna be like certain environments that you're gonna have to take fights, and like certain places where you're gonna have to take fights, and like we talked about earlier, with the layout of the map, and like if you're 50-50 and you're fighting a team, there's a much more higher chance of an isolated fight,
Sure.
especially in the early game. So there's gonna be comps that are gonna be like pushing towards that, like a Bangalore or a Jib, something that can fight.
Fair enough. As we kind of wrap this thing up here, I want to talk about just, the future of competitive Apex briefly. I know there's a lot of things kind of being thrown around, either rumor-wise or whisper-wise. We don't have to necessarily go into that. But if you were just to pick, some of your biggest wishes for a competitive Apex, whether it be maps, weapons, legends, whatever it happens to be, or just format when it comes to tournament things, what are some of your biggest wishes when it comes to competitive Apex as a whole? We'll start with you, Risky.
What I want to see, and I think like Apex as a whole has like a very big potential. The thing is, like BRs as an esport is relatively new. Like it's only been around for about 2 years, and people are still trying to
Right.
figure out like how to do it properly. And I don't think anyone has figured out how to do it. Like Fortnite is the most successful game in the world, but that's because of like the content that they're producing, and they're able to pretty much like consistently update the game. And it's just a universally like played game on a multiple platform, which I think Apex is going towards. I think they announced that they were going to have a partnership with Steam, and then there's a potential that the game is going to go to mobile. So
Right.
with all that stuff coming out, the game definitely has like a lot more potential to become more mainstream and at the same level or close to Fortnite. But from an esports perspective, the way that Fortnite does it, it's pretty much just the way to advertise the game. I think you could like say PUBG has an esports variant where it's like a league system. I guess it's somewhat similar to like another BR, like the first BR that like popularized like H1. I think they're like ending, like their esports ended with a pro league. And I personally don't like that format. I think like once a game goes to a league system, I think it just cuts down on like viewership interaction. I think it has to be something where it's like big events, like something similar to like the way Counter Strike does it. So
Sure.
like if there's a minor major system, and of course you want to have like the great thing about Fortnite is it's open to everyone, but like the downside to that is like you don't have these like set like land events either. So I think it needs to like be some kind of mix between that. So like I would say some kind of open qualifier to get you to like the minor system, and something that pretty much builds your way. Like if you have a set team, like so if you have your own team and then you're not with an org, or if you're with an org, you're pretty much like building towards going to a major or like to a World Cup type event. I would say an online qualifier that gets you to a minor. If you perform, sorry about that. If you perform well at a minor, you get like certain points to go to like a world event. And on top of that, you like are able to get some kind of like, let's say you get top 3 at a minor. It maybe guarantees you a position at a major. And I guess so out of open qualifiers, ideally, I would say 40 teams, but I don't think they're probably going to look at that. They're probably going to make it much wider because of like the way Poland was going. Like
Sure.
Poland had 80 teams, and that's somewhat unheard of for like a BR. Having 240 players in like an open tournament for a battle royale is it's massive. Like I think most competitive players, and this is for me personally speaking, I think Meerko could probably agree. I think like 40 is ideal, but they're probably going to have it open to that. Like, and I understand from like a perspective to get as many people involved in the game as possible.
Sure.
I like that, but at the same time, like the downside to Poland, I'm sure you guys talked about it like on your last podcast, like what people thought about Poland. The downside to that was with so many teams and BRs as a whole, they're not your standard 5v5 esport game. They're not Counter Strike. They're not Overwatch. You can't like have a you can't have a set like format going on where you're like bursting a team and it's like the better team wins that day. That's not what happens with battle royales. Like battle royales, you can have the best teams in the world and they might not underperform because of like during certain like RNG elements, like a circle or like loot. So you want to limit as much RNG as possible, and having like a 3-game format is a little too low. So just to wrap it all up, I would say an online qualifier to get like more people involved. It would kind of like propel you into a minor system. If you perform well at a minor, which could be online, then a major would be lands, and hopefully they have like a few like major split up like during the year, and this would all like work towards like a World Cup, big world invitational type event.
Meerko,
That's
thoughts
my
from
that's
I,
my ideal. Like it might be like, I don't know, too much to ask for. It's if I mean I've thought about this like a lot because I've been in BRs, like, I mean we go back to Realm and before that like to
yeah.
PUBG. So like I think this type of system is one that would pretty much propel BRs to be like a tier 1 esport. And I think Apex has that capability in the NA, like in the NA scene.
Sure. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I mean, for Poland, it showed that that system has a lot of pros to it. I would say that you could have nixed 20 teams and 60 would have done the job. That's kind of where, I was kind of thinking was 60 would be a really healthy number to do that kind of double elimination style bracket. But Meerko, what are your kind of thoughts either on that or your own ideas as far as competitive Apex's future?
I thought for the most part, 80 teams was definitely gonna be too much, but honestly, I think it was fine. The problem really laid into how many games we played, like Risky said. I think for us to really kind of determine who the best teams were in that lobby, we needed like 4 or 5 games. So I would like to see the same amount of teams, but more days, and give us more time to really kind of hash it out. Um, One thing I do want to see for the future of competitive, it is in my opinion, is the only thing that Fortnite gets right when it comes to competitive, and that is pop-up cups. I
Sure.
would love to see pop-up cups in Apex. I think it is a brilliant idea. And to kind of tag along to Ruski's online qualifier, rather than do online qualifiers, I'd rather see consistency kind of playing rather than one tournament. So have a bunch of pop-up tournaments. Have one once a week. Have one, twice a month, whatever, but those points are accumulating, and the teams that place the highest consistently in those and rack up the most amount of points earn their spot in a tournament, whether it be an offline qualifier or anything. Give them a chance to prove themselves over a long period of time, and that's how you really get the best competition. I think when you pull in one tournament, you might have a couple Cinderella stories. You might have a couple teams that honestly probably shouldn't have been there. I'd rather see teams that have grinded it out and have shown that they are worthy of the chance. And I think that's how it should always be. Um, so my hope is more online tournaments. I want to see at least bi-monthly or once a week.
So not necessarily like a league, but almost like a circuit or a series where it's
Yeah.
like you have like a month and a half to compete in as many and rack up as many points as possible. Okay, I could see that.
I think
Could be cool.
I think that adds consistency, and it also adds a lot of tournaments and competition for people to watch. I mean, everyone loves watching competition, and I think it's great. I think it allows for even streamers to make a stream team and play in online tournaments. It's once a week. It's a big huge event that everyone looks forward to, like every Saturday. Your favorite streamers, your favorite pro players, anyone can compete if you have reached a certain criteria of rank or something like that. I think it's great, and it should be something that they should do.
I think the other thing too that maybe we haven't necessarily talked about, but I'm sure is sitting in the back of our minds is that would be a great way, and really any kind of open qualifier format, getting the ability for casual style players to see that there is an esport here, and it bridges the gap between your casual and your competitive. There is a clear pathway of, all right, well, I just got to play in this, and if I'm good enough, then I'll be able to kind of break my way in, and then you start to kind of experience it that way. Because that's, I think, like you guys had mentioned, to the scope that Fortnite has been able to do things. You had your streamers initially, and then you had your up and coming grinders that ended up becoming pro players, but you still have a vast majority of that game that is still involved in their casual scene. And seeing people that either I had followed or knew from previous games that were more casual minded say, you know what, I will throw myself into this pop-up cup. Hey, I did pretty well. Maybe I will start to pursue this a little bit more seriously. That bridge is usually very difficult for most games to kind of find between the casual, the competitive, and the esport. I think that's a really solid way of maybe trying to find a way to do that.
And it gives people that kind of clear road to, this is how I go pro, or this
Sure.
is how I play the game competitively. It helps. The only other game that I've ever seen it done other than Fortnite is League of Legends. They have a beautiful laid out rank system where you play all the way to the top, you get to challenger, and a lot of those challenger players get tryouts from academy teams and work their way up into the pros. And having that ability to have the same exact game as normals, but in a competitive format is the best way to have the game. And that's what I love about Apex. That's why I think it's great that they don't have solos or duos, and it's just a trio base. And it's just something where the pro scene and the casual community, they know what's going on. It's the same exact game. It's clear cut, and that's what I think is beautiful about Apex.
Well, I'm glad that you built a natural segue to our final thoughts here. Duos is going to be coming out. We saw the kind of release saying that Duos will be the next LTM to come out. So what are your initial thoughts on Duos? Are you expecting it to feel similar to like how solos felt when it was there? Are you expecting there to be anything kind of serious, or is it something you're just going to troll around with some friends and have some fun until it goes away?
I think it's a
I
lot
think
of fun. Go ahead,
I
Risky. Actually,
think it'd be like a fun event to just play. I don't. I think like Meerko just said, like pretty much like the competitive aspect of the game should always be trios. Like it works well. It's meant to be like a team game with like different ability legends and how they like mix well together and how they like pretty much fight other teams with different comps. The only thing is, I think there should be a solos mode in the game. Like I know there was an LTM for it, and now they're like producing another LTM with duos, and they're going to be probably working on other LTMs. But I think solos should just be like a casual, like a like pretty much right now when you go into Apex, you have the training mode, regular games, ranked, and then like potentially an LTM. Not always an LTM is available. So with the regular mode, I think there should be solos or trios in the regular mode because pretty much like right now, I think one of the biggest hurdles for people getting into the game is they don't have people to play with. They don't have like a team to set up with. And like a lot of times when I'm streaming and I don't have like let's say somebody to play with, like usually I would be like focusing on ranked. But if I'm not like when before ranked was even a thing in the game, you're just going into a team. If you're playing against a set of three, most likely you're going to lose almost every time. And it's just not it's most likely not an enjoyable experience for a lot of people. So like it puts a lot of people off. So if you have that souls mode, I think that brought in a lot of people. And it pretty much gives the people like the opportunity to like, I don't need to find two other people to play with. I could just get into the game. I can play my favorite legend. I think it'll just open up like the floodgates for more people to kind of play the game on their downtime or whenever they want to play Apex, for example, but they don't have
Sure.
like to play with. So duos, I mean, it hasn't been done in the game yet. We've had solos, we have had trios. It'll be interesting to see like what happens with duos, what like comps are going to be like played out. Is it just going to be rates and pathfinders all over the map? It'll be fun. Like I'm kind of excited for it. I'm personally, since PUBG, duos has always been my favorite game format for BRs.
I was the same way as well.
And
Yeah.
yeah, trios I think is like a new variant because it's always been solos, duos, and squads before. So trios is a new variant. I think it's a good middle ground. I think it's perfect for this game. But we'll see what like how duos work out. I'm excited for it.
Meerko, what are your
I
thoughts
think
on duos?
I think duos is definitely going to be interesting to play. Um, I do think at the heart of the game it should stay competitively 3v3, and I wouldn't want to see anything else come out on that side. But from a casual experience, yeah, I could see how solos and duos would make a lot of sense. Um, and it should be something that will be pretty cool to see. One thing I do want, and I do hope that do hope happens, is we get a duos tournament because we had the solos tournament, and that was a lot of fun to watch. I would love to see a duos tournament because I honestly think it could be really cool. And I those kind of games like the solos and duos, and if they ever do anything else like that, I think those should be done as like streamer events and just kind of like that kind of stuff. I think it's a lot of fun, and it kind of brings a different light to the game that trios doesn't have. Because yeah, like Ruski said, there's different comps that people play, and honestly, who knows? The loot might be insane for duos. You know what I mean? You drop into a spot and there's like 3 or 4 teams or like 10 teams in capital. You know what I mean? Like it could be pretty cool. I honestly, I can't wait. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see it as well. I know it's gonna that extra little breath of life. They seem to always bring it right in the right amount of time. Because I'll tell you, the Halloween event it's been fun, but like you mentioned, it's only really fun for a certain amount of time until you get those challenges done. So I'm excited for duos. Again, that's Meerko and Ruski joining us this evening to get a different change of time and day. So if you're listening to the podcast, we do these live every Friday now, or every other Friday. Every 2 weeks we'll do these, starting at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me. A pleasure having you guys on. Final words from you before we sign off?
Thanks for having me, man. It was great to talk about the game. I'm like always passionate about BR, so any other time you want to talk about Apex or anything else, just let me know.
You know it. Meerko, good to have you as well,
man.
friend.
It was a pleasure. It was nice getting to talk to you a bit, and definitely I'd love to do this again. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, guys. Well, hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Until then, though, hope you guys out there all keep holding it down. So long.